talk about data sharing. Now, it's a hot room, it's late in the day. I just said data sharing.
And in a half an hour, it's drinks.
Yeah, there you go. We stand between us and beers. So let's talk about data sharing, data governance. First thing I want to do is talk a little bit about what we've done in Virginia. So if you roll some slides, you heard the Secretary talk about the EMU, and I'm not talking about the 9-foot bird, the Enhanced Memorandum of Understanding, sometimes known to the security officers as the devil's document, because it does start to open some doors. You know, today, I'm going to walk you through part of our training material, then a little bit of lessons learned. So Goldie's keeping me moving by moving the slides. He's pretty clever, that guy. So when we do training, one of the first things we talk about is this how we're working with our customers today? That really, when we talk about program interaction, we're making the poor customer run around to all of our organizations, to our agencies. And in the end, it becomes a real program-focused interaction. We force point-to-point communications, and we force the citizen to do those point-to-point communications for us. And in the end, the citizen really initiates all that activity. So, roll. Where do we want to go? Well, clearly it's a streamlined conversation where there's more of a single point of communication, and we, the state, take on the responsibility of distributing information when we learn it, share it to the other agencies. So we really push a lot of that activity across. Thank you, Goldie. You're doing good.
Thank you.
Can I call you Vanna?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought I'd try at
You're
least.
getting away with Goldie once too many times.
Should I go to the D word? Richard?
No.
Okay. He'll take Goldie now. You also saw this slide this morning. And this is a realistic slide. The size of the dots gauge the Virginia programs, the size of the Virginia programs. And realistically, again, as the Secretary mentioned this morning, we really don't have a strong understanding today, this moment, how many people are in multiple programs. That's something we need to fix, and that's where the EMU gets into the process. Man, you are really keeping that pace up. So, he's good. So, again, state of the art for many people, data sharing today. Agency A, Agency C want to do a data relationship. They get the attorneys involved, they start opening up the file cabinets, they start an MOA or an MOU. Well, guess what? Another agency comes along, Agency B wants to share data, guess what they do? They start the whole paper cycle over again. And it's clearly a very inefficient process. Now you can roll. Where we want to go is the notion of a single agreement, and that agreement is extendable over time. We'll talk more about that. That single agreement really builds the idea of simplification, transparency, builds in efficiency. Ironically, it can build in security, because I bet you a lot of dollars that if you keep doing those MOUs, how many people are really reading what the security requirements are about them? They sit in a file cabinet. So the EMU tries to get past that and having a lot more visibility. So Goldie, roll again. So the Enhanced Memorandum of Understanding, it's a single process that in the end creates this reusable, secure agreement that's broad enough to cover multiple agencies, yet can be extended and customized to meet the needs of specific stakeholders. So if you do it. So here's how it's organized. It's really broken into 3 pieces. The first 2 sections are really the bedrock sections. So the first section is the base agreement, and that covers really the rules of the road. Definitions, what's the roles of the partners, what's the roles around data usage, the definition of coordinating committee. That's a big concept because the EMU is really managed by a coordinating committee of peers. It defines those roles, and it defines that little thing like dispute resolution. Thank you, I got 10 minutes. Good.
You can go on, just ignore Stefan.
I'm good with that. The appendix really gets onto another of the some additional operational processes, covering when you want to add partners, drop partners, if there's a breach, data exchange requirements, some good base bedrock information. Really, the magic happens in the attachment, and the attachment is where for each data exchange we want to have, that's where we really have a fill-in-the-blank template. So when it becomes necessary to create a data relationship, instead of creating a volume of new paper, you go to an online form and you fill in that form, and that really defines what data relationship and the rules specific to that relationship. If you would roll. So this gives you just a real quick snapshot of what that attachment looks like. This is usually where the security officers get a little more relaxed because we identify for them in the attachment. It says which agencies can get the data, what specific data, for what business purpose, for how long, and a magic point, which applicable law covers getting that data. And that's a big piece of it. If you would, sir.
And it also goes through, in a comprehensive way, making sure that the data that's coming in is clean so that it's usable, and that the data that goes out is clean, so that there is that sense that our systems will be secure with both data coming in and going out, which is a relief to the CIOs and the privacy officers.
That's a good point, and I don't want to digress too far into it, break our pace, we're doing pretty good.
We're doing well.
But really in the end, what did you say? Okay. In the end, that notion of a validation plan is captured in the document. Who defines that validation plan? Well, obviously the author of the data, the person who, or the organization that puts the data out there, they know the most about it. And then they hold that up as a guideline that subscribers need to take. So, if you would, sir, this is the second slide where the security officers get more comfortable, usually because of the very first line. It's already been approved by our Attorney General's office. How many classics majors do we have around here? When I say the name Sisyphus, do you know who I mean? Yeah, there we go. So getting through the attorney was a sense of like rolling the rock uphill for a couple of years, but it eventually did get through. It is compliant with HIPAA. It can be used with very stringent data relationships between partners. And it really covers internal technology and program restrictions. I'll talk a little more about that in a moment. The coordinating committee, I've mentioned that a couple of times. It's important that we want to make sure the agency leaders aren't giving up their data. But what they are saying is, we agree by being a participant in this coordinating committee that we as peers will talk about what data we're sharing, what issues we have with it, what challenges we have with it, what security requirements. So it really builds that dialogue. I'm very happy today to say that all 11 HHR agencies voluntarily joined. I have their wet signatures. The lawyers taught me that. I have their wet signatures framed in my office. So that's a good piece.
Wet with blood?
Nah.
No.
Blue ink. And ultimately, we see this also clearly driving analytics, because as we pull in data from multiple sources, we can put them through our analytics processes and ultimately come to a point where we can anticipate needs, coordinate services, and measure outcomes. So I think, and when we do the training, we also try to make the point that it's a cumulative effort. We're talking about the EMU today and really data sharing. That builds a sense of greater cooperation across us as partners. I mean, if Goldie and I can do this, that's pretty amazing. It fosters analytics, it fosters services. Ultimately, when we get to the high level, it can build citizen-centric delivery, and it can help us make our strategic goals, those 6 goals that Secretary Hazel identified earlier. So now, lessons learned. This is what's interesting. Clearly, the EMU, I think you've heard this enough times. By getting the coordinating committee together, we meet monthly, we review what's going on in terms of data sharing. It provides a synchronization point where we as data peers can talk about what our shared understanding on goals and issues around it. It cuts down administrative latency. I heard a number mentioned earlier, data sharing relationship, 6 months. Okay, now I grant you this was an atypical one, but we did one last week, 3 days. Okay, it moved that quick, and we did it by email. So it was a positive relationship. It's also a venue to leverage reframing lessons. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if one agency figures out a way that within law, always within law, right, Mr. Attorney?
Yes.
Okay, always within law, if one agency figures out a way to get access to the data, then all 10 others have visibility to that same idea, and we're able to pile on. I mean, in a football sense. So why not? BYOG.
BYGO.
Thank you. So.
A-OK.
Yeah.
I appreciate the content that the guys on the team here are critiquing the performance, and we want you to keep your day job while you do it.
Amen. I'm okay with that. But I'll happily give the mic to either of the gentlemen if they want. I see they're still sitting down. And I hope you are too. BYGO, buy one, get one. Again, the notion of in the coordinating committee, and this is a legitimate example. A couple of meetings back, we had one agency talking to another about getting access to the death registry information because they wanted to integrate it into their operations. Heaven forbid, maybe we stop benefits when somebody dies. And so that's a good thing. Well, in the process of having that conversation, all the other members of the coordinating committee very quickly came to realize they should get access to that same data. And so, one conversation can foster a lot more interoperability because there's visibility around it. That attachment A really buckets down, and it has a section in there for empowering language. It literally is a fill in the blank to tell me what legal language is being invoked to allow this data to be shared. And that's a paradigm shift. Instead of the other way around where you write a document giving all the rules of the road, we kind of put it down to a specific block and ask for it. And the last piece I get to, CISOs have less control in the process, chief information security officers. Instead of having them coordinate with the lawyers, our MOUs, it really moves the data sharing relationship to the coordinating committee, and we consult with the CISOs and the attorneys, again, for empowering language and specific reasons we can do things. And I believe that's it. Well, wait. Next steps. So we are working today with all 11 HHR agencies. It's very exciting that education, public safety, and elections have both come forward, and they're interested in joining the coordinating committee. So we're working on version 2 of the document. We've shared the material through Goldie with, you want to talk?
Yeah. Ever since Dr. Hazel began his journey with interoperability, the Commonwealth of Virginia has been extraordinarily open to sharing and partnering with other states and localities. So through the good auspices of their office and Mike and his staff, I've really taken this EMU concept to Illinois, where the framework project deals with 9 different agencies comprising of 75 different programs. And they've taken the Virginia EMU and is really adapting it now for the Illinois program, as is 3 counties in California that's trying to create a data trust whereby the Health and Human Services and Education Services in these 3 counties in the Silicon Valley will have their information controlled or kept by one of the University of San Jose, under an EMU, so that the kind of confidence that Mike and Dr. Hazel and their teams have really created in the Commonwealth of Virginia can now be used elsewhere. So it's truly a partnership among states and jurisdictions. Dr. Hazel's turned to this guy and said, "We did? We gave away?" No, so he did, and it really gives other places a great starting point with the tremendous work that they've done. So my thanks to Mike and to Dr. Hazel.
And really, it's all about that sharing about sharing. We're happy to share the material. The only caveat we put out to it when we shared it with New Jersey and Illinois and California is, as you change it and make improvements, send those back to us, because
Absolutely.
We'd like to learn from that. Okay? And
Well, thank you very much.